Does knowing exist without doing? It's a question worth exploring on a new chapter for closing the knowing-doing gap here on the Reinvention Chronicles. So the question today is, does knowledge, real knowledge, exist without doing, without implementation? Hey, there's about 30,000 business books alone released each and every year, so there's no shortage of knowledge to be accumulated in a place like Chapters. But the danger of failing to implement what you know is then talk becomes a substitute for action, memory becomes a substitute for thinking, and readers are no longer leaders. Readers become procrastinators. So how does an individual or an organization close the knowing-doing gap? In other words, how do you turn dreams and ideas into actual goals achieved and results that you can show? And I guess one of the people that I've met along the way that's probably done it better than most is Jim Gilbert. He is Canada's huggable car dealer. And Jim, I think people will sometimes mistake the success of that business, and it is one of Canada's greatest small business success stories. People will attribute it often to just, clever marketing. And the truth, that's so far from the truth. When it gets right down to it, Jim Gilbert's success deals with two words: ruthless execution, as it relates to closing the knowing-doing gap. Knowing what has to be done, then actually doing it, leaving behind the metaphorical bookstore. You can only read so much, you can only plan so much. And, as I look forward to doing more and more sessions with Jim at our new venture called Huggable University, I thought this would be most appropriate today because I did ask Jim about the knowing-doing gap and how he would summarize it in just one word.
Consistency. Once again, if you say you do it, you got to do it. But you got to do it every time, every day. And if the secret sauce is that, it's every day. Like I talk to business, I just talked with them the other day. I do this, Jim, I do that, Jim, then I get busy and a lot of stuff comes on the go and it slides away. It can't slide away. Do you want to know the secret to letting it not slide away? Write it down. There's no memory as good as the lead of a pencil. Write it down. And I told my friend the other day that asked me that same question. I said, Desmond, take the 3 to 5 things that you want to make sure is consistent and write them down, and every day just look at them. Maybe not every day, every other day. So many people, they got this big mushroom world. They want to do 6 million things. We can't do 6 million things, and we overwhelm ourselves. Reduce it to the simple. Take 3 to 5 things and consistently do them. Then you add little pieces on those things, but you got to know your core, and you got to do it.
So I think there's 3 things to consider when it comes to closing the know gap for 2017. Number 1, avoid what I call the smart talk trap. In other words, just because someone thinks they can perform intellectual gymnastics and dazzle meetings with their brilliance, or they have a number of credentials or degrees on the wall, that doesn't necessarily translate into action. It's action that drives results, and you can have the greatest strategies and the greatest plans in the world, but they mean nothing unless someone actually takes a chance and pulls the trigger, which means number 2, drop back and punt perfectionism, because unless we develop a tolerance, and a real tolerance for risk and failure, we're always going to be waiting to be perfect, getting ready just to get ready. And that the problem with that is that it really slows down and delays the learning curve. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly at first. I mean, think about it. If you tried to ski or tried golfing or tried tennis or riding a bicycle, likely you did it badly at first, but over time, the more chances you gave yourself to actually fail. The more you learn, the more you improve. So avoid smart talk, punt perfectionism, and whatever you do, if you really need help to close the knowing doing gap, reach out, get a lifeline, get a friend, get a mentor, get a colleague, get a coach. In other words, involve some other person. You will break promises to yourself, but you're likely not going to break a promise to somebody else. So in that context, it's another person that can sometimes hold your feet to the fire and not let you slip into that gap that exists between the knowing and the doing. See, closing the gap can never be accomplished by reading books, by reading articles, by going to seminars, by watching videos such as this one, no matter how informative or inspiring they may or may not be. It does require action, which begs the question, does knowing really exist without doing? Love to hear your thoughts. Love to hear your experiences with the knowing doing gap, what you have found that has actually worked, and also what is it that gets in the way of closing that knowing doing gap and allowing you to recreate and reimagine the business, the brand, the career that you deserve.